Welcome to episode 3 of The Shadow Speaks with me, Nicholas Malin, a devotee of the shadow. But that's enough about me. Let's dive right in. Today we're going to talk about all things negative self-talk. We're going to talk about the connection between negative self-talk and the deepest, darkest parts of the shadow, of the psyche, of the unconscious, however you want to describe it. There isn't particularly the right language and the right words for it yet because it's unknown, because it's dark, because it's murky. So I use the word shadow, but it's anything that's unconscious, which basically involves everything and anything, the entire universe. Infinity is in the shadow. It manifests through our body and through our mind as fears, anxieties, dreams, desires, things that we don't know, things that we are unsure of, things that hold us back, things that feel so uncomfortable that we spend our entire lives numbing ourselves and distracting ourselves from. In this episode, we're going to look at the ubiquitous nature of negativity in the mind. We're going to look at how it demands and requires our attention now. We're going to look at how it operates from the shadow with subtlety and a distractive impact. We're going to look at how it's not yours, it never was, and why that's really important to remember. We're going to look at how the negative self-talk, most of it unknown, most of it unconscious, most of it we are unaware of. We're going to look and explain and describe and unravel how it drives our behavior. It drives us to do things we don't want to do, and it drives us not to do the things that we want to do. This is very important. We're going to look at how this subtle and destructive negative self-talk affects our emotions and thus affects our behaviors. And we're going to look at how that affects our dopamine system and how most of us are not optimizing our neurochemistry. So we're going to get into a little bit of neuroscience. I can't wait for that. That's going to be exciting. We're going to look at what the solution is, what the medicine is to negative self-talk. And this is where it really gets practical, right? That Dr. Carl Jung, he was the OG, the top G of shadow work. He really coined that term and really understood it. And he describes two main practices, really, that will begin to bridge our present moment awareness with the unconscious. And we're going to go into that a little bit. So let us begin. Right. So negative self-talk. This is an important entrance point into shadow work because I know it. I know it so well. I have known negative self-talk all my life, probably like most people, to varying degrees. There are certainly times when the sun is shining and I'm feeling good, then the quality of my thoughts is different. Maybe when it's midwinter, which it also is midwinter, but it's a sunny day today. But when it's midwinter, it's dark, it's cold. That and other factors play in to the manifestation and the uprising of negative self-talk. So we all have it to varying degrees at different times. But what I'm really interested in is the impact it has and where it's come from. First of all, again, we all have negative self-talk. First thing to remember is that we're not angels. And what I mean by that is we're humans, we're flawed, we have insecurities. It's what makes us so lovable, right? We don't love people in spite of their insecurities and their weaknesses and their flaws. We love them because of their insecurities and weaknesses and flaws. It's what makes human beings so adorable that we can go through so much suffering and so much pain and still be a beacon of light and hope in the world. Negative self-talk exists everywhere, right? It exists in the playgrounds, in children, it exists in the corporate boardrooms with the millionaires and billionaires. Everyone has doubts. Everyone has times when they give themselves a hard time in a way that you would never normally give anyone else a hard time. I would never speak to people the way I sometimes have spoken to myself. It's absolutely despicable the way I speak to myself sometimes. Not so much anymore as I dive into this work and devote my entire life to this work because it uncovers some of the root causes. But fuck me, I mean, in my past, in my teenage years, in my 20s, in my 30s, I hated on myself. You're not good enough. You're shit. You're unlovable. That was, I had such an attachment to those ideas and those beliefs that they caused such discomfort and pain and emotional turmoil in me. I would never speak to anyone like that. And that's the nature of the shadow, right? It's internalized. Okay, so we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Let's look a little bit more at the root causes of a negative self-talk. The voice itself, or the voices itself of negative self-talk, you may notice that it is your own voice. You may notice that it's your voice from the past. You may notice that it's a parent or a friend or someone that you knew or someone that you know, either in the present tense or the past tense. And this is really the crux of the problem, right? It can manifest as any voice, my own, my dad's, certainly my dad's, my brother's, people I've known in the past. That's not the point. The point is that the devil is playing a trick on me into fooling me into thinking that this is somehow part of me, right? By giving me these familiar voices. I'm going to unravel this, so bear with me. The energy of that voice, the root of the energy of that voice actually comes from way back in my ancestry. It's generational, probably goes back millennia, thousands and thousands of years. If we want to get to the root of the shadow, the root of evil, if you like, you're probably going to go and have to check out the Bible, the fall of man, Eve eating the apple, but we're not really going to go there. All we really need to know is that it's not us. That voice isn't me. It's not mine, and it never was. I remember a good few years ago now, I'm in a shadow workshop environment. We're sitting in a big circle. The facilitator, a really awesome practitioner, she's holding the space, and she's inviting us all to set an intention for what we would like to let go of, because we're going into this shadow work ritual. And she says, be specific. What thoughts and ideas and beliefs do you want to let go of? And I'm sitting there and I'm racking my brains. And then she says something that really stuck out. She said, remember, it's not yours. It never was. It will never belong to you. And there was a penny that dropped in that moment. It's okay. This voice in my head, it's not mine. Sounds like me. I think it's me. I'm attaching myself to the thought, and therefore it's becoming a belief, and therefore it's impacting my life. The energy behind that thought, it's not mine. It never was, never belonged to me. So there's something that's coming through and then manifesting through my own psyche that's hating on myself. This energy, right, this force that has been coming through generationally, it's been passed on through humanity in general for many thousands of years, invisible, subtle, quiet. We don't really have a decent name for this force. Although indigenous and native tribes, they were very specific about this force. One word I use is the word Wetiko, which is the name given for this force by the Native American tribes. In fact, I'm going to go get the book and show you. Okay, here we go. This is the book, Paul Levy, Dispelling Wetiko, Breaking the Curse of Evil. Dispelling, very important that it's dispelling. First thing you need to do, excuse me, I'm a bit out of breath. First thing you need to do is spell it. You need to give it a name. You need to name this force. The closest we have in our culture is the devil or evil, and it doesn't quite cut the mustard. The devil is a personification. When we think of the devil, we think of a being. When this force really is non-local, it permeates through consciousness, through the field, and that's the real insidious part of this. So anyway, the Native Americans called it Wetiko, and this is the cause, the root of that energy that manifests as negative self-talk and then has the insidious impact, the holding back, the stuckness and the confusion that manifests in our body and in our lives. Okay, so we're going quite deep here. So let's just take a step back. Let's take a breath. Let's take a moment. The important takeaways at this point is that all those voices in your head, even if it's your voice, your parents' voice, a teacher's voice, the important thing to matter is it doesn't matter. It's not important. It's not you and it's not yours. There's an energy that's arising up in your consciousness, and it's using memories and forms and symbols of your past to manifest this negativity, this darkness, this shadow into your own field. So it's not yours. It never was yours. There's a name for it that traditions have and native cultures have given it. They've understood the nature of evil, and we don't in our culture. We really don't. And I believe that's problematic, because just look around, just look at the shitstorm that we are in, the greed, the war, the terror, the mental health crisis. I mean, when I really understand the depth of the problem, in the sense that I'm like, oh fuck, like this is ubiquitous throughout humanity at this time, and it has for millennia, and it's an invisible force that's manifesting through the psyche. Like, oh fuck, like all of a sudden the statistics start to make sense of why things are as they are, right? So in the UK, every 90 minutes 25 people attempt suicide. One of those 25 people succeed, and out of those, one in every 90 minutes, 78% are men. That's fucking outrageous. And you can start to really see the problem at a deeper level when you understand the nature of Watiko and the nature of the shadow, and really the cause of negative self-talk. So I'm really going into this because it's important to understand the problem at a deeper level. It's important because we're going to look at the way through, the solution, if you like, even though it's like a lifelong practice. But remembering like, that's not me, creates a little bit of distance, just that little bit of space between the thought and the belief, or the thought and the listener, or the thinking and the observer. Just by creating that little bit of space, it can arise, and there can just like a millimeter of space in me through my own practice. It's like, it's you again. Okay, you're not real, or you're not me, you're not mine. No, thank you. Just that little bit of space and that little bit of intentional mindset to come in and meet it. I hope this is making sense so far. So, the real problem of negative self-talk is the impact it has on our life. We may see it as a frustration, an annoying thing that arises, but I believe that we don't actually see the full impact of the negativity, right? The darkness of our own mind, from our mind to ourself. And what I mean by that is that I strongly believe that we are creative, joyful, playful beings. And we are spiritual beings, for want of a better term. This is my own belief. I don't expect anyone else to believe it just because I say it. But I have this sense, and I've done enough work on myself and drunk enough plant medicines to know that at times I am just love and gratitude. That's it. My being is love and gratitude. I've only peeked. I've only just looked through the curtain at that and got a little snapshot of it. And then there's this closing down. My mind reverts to its normal, everyday neuromodel grooves that are of inadequacy, of not good enough. They're there, they're strong, they're powerful. So the problem itself and the impact it has is because this negative self-talk very easily turns into beliefs about ourselves. So let me take some examples from my own negative self-talk holding me back. You can't do that. Well, that becomes a belief, right? That becomes a belief that ensures that I'm not going to try. You're not good enough. Well, that's going to make sure that I'm not going to give it my best go, right? They are better than me. Well, that's going to kill my creativity. That's going to be a belief. That's going to impact how I feel about myself, about my actions. You're stupid. I had that as a kid, right? So naturally, that's a powerful belief that I've taken on, inherited, maybe. That's going to make sure that I'm very anxious about learning, which I have been in the past. And no one cares about you. No one cares what you've got to say. No one's going to watch your podcast, Nick. No one gives a shit. Well, that's going to make me withdraw from life. And certainly, those are just some examples of the energy of negative self-talk creating beliefs in me that then manifest in my life as inaction, certainly, as withdrawing, as anxiety, as depression. This was me. So I speak from experience, and I speak from someone who is also had that experience of love and gratitude. So I trust that there is something to look at here, something to address here. There's a problem, there's a solution. There has to be a solution. The solution is encoded within the poison. That's what Paul Levy says in this book. And I highly recommend this book. It's my third time I'm reading it through now, and I will probably continue to read it through for the rest of my life because there's so much gold in it. So these beliefs that I've been sharing about, they have an impact on the way I obviously act and don't act. And one of the key points here is that to optimize your neurochemistry, certainly dopamine, which is your neurotransmitter connected to motivation and reward, is that we are really only truly fulfilled if we are pursuing meaningful goals, right? That's just a fact. Like, we need to pursue meaningful goals. That's going to give the biggest dopamine hit that is possible. That might not be the right neuroscientific language, but dopamine is released when you set a goal and you visualize and you're clear on the goal. Then you get a dopamine hit, which energizes you to take action. It needs to be challenging. It needs to involve effort. So when I took on the belief that I'm not good enough, I'm stupid, that no one cares, then I'm instantly halting my own capacity for action, right? Which means I'm not getting that reward system activated, which is so important to a healthy, fulfilling, meaningful life. And the problem is double-edged, because without the deep, expensive dopamine, I call it expensive because it involves effort and challenge, then I reach for the cheap dopamine. Reaching for my phone, that's a cheap dopamine hit. For me as well, it was cannabis, instant hit, instant dopamine, feel a bit better. And instant or cheap dopamine abounds everywhere, right? That can be overconsumption of food, of alcohol, substances, porn, shopping, sex, anything and everything to get that hit that just slightly numbs and distracts you from the uncomfortable feeling of not feeling good enough. From my own perspective. The problem with cheap dopamine, of course, is that it reduces your baseline dopamine so that you basically just feel a bit shitter, right? It's the expensive dopamine, the hard, challenging, rewarding effort. And I'm reminding of some great memes that I've heard online recently. The magic you are seeking lies in the work you are avoiding. I love that. That's beautiful. The obstacle is the way. I'm reading that book at the moment. I'm loving that. You know, there needs to be an element of work and effort and challenge in life. So we can see, and I bring this up because we can see over here that we need challenge. And yet if we're negatively self-talking ourselves out of making any effort, then we're going to stay down here, low baseline dopamine, feel like shit, numbing ourselves. Like the negative self-talk isn't just a frustration in life. It's the reason that we have a global epidemic of mental health crisis on our hands. It's the reason that most people are struggling, and we can now map this path from rewarding, fulfilling, hard, challenging work to negative self-chat, all the way down to like the nature of the shadow itself and the energy that comes through the shadow. So let's do a quick recap. Hopefully you're still with me on this. First of all, the most important thing to know about negative self-talk is that it's not you, doesn't belong to you. It was never yours. It was never yours to begin with. That's just creates a little bit of space that allows us to then start to cultivate a little bit more awareness. The awareness of like, oh, it's you again. Oh, you're not mine. Like, it may still come up and it may still affect us, but we're creating space. Now we're building that awareness. Oh, it's you again. Oh, no, thank you. You're not true. You're not welcome. Thank you. You know, like I've done a lot of shadow work in terms of trying to befriend these voices. That's helped to a degree, but actually the most effective tool I've used against negative self-talk is just to be like, actually, fuck off. Like, no, thank you. Like, no, thank you. And come over the top with a really strong, empowering mindset, which also takes some cultivation. Negative self-talk has profound effects on how you feel and what you do and what you don't do. It is the ultimate cause of heavy emotion, of stuckness, confusion, frustration. And you see a lot of men that are angry and full of rage because they don't know what it is, but they just feel something. Like that's, again, we can now map that path through the feeling and the emotion and the stuckness and the heaviness to the root of the problem. And then, of course, it turns into a belief, and then that belief manifests as action, and then it becomes your reality as it's reflected back to you. So what's the solution? So we've touched on this a little bit, and it's in this book one last time, just for those that are really interested in diving deep into shadow work. I reckon you should. I say shadow work is like the absolute OG of personal growth. Go into the shadow. It's uncomfortable. It's going to demand some courage, but it's worth it because you can undo like the core, the root of the problem. And by doing so, you don't need to who you are. You don't need to do any more work on like your purpose or being confident, right? You just have to unlearn the negative shit and you will appear, you will manifest. That's what's happened to me. Like my core essence, I don't really know about purpose. I'm not sure I believe in purpose, but I have more energy unlocked from the shadow. I can make better choices, make better decisions, and go for the things that I really want to, and create purpose, create meaning. So anyway, that's just, that's what I've done. I think it's a great thing to do. So let's start with a quote, one of my favorite quotes from a film. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. I fucking love that quote. That's from the 1995 movie, The Usual Suspects. And that quote really underscores the film's central theme, and also a theme that runs through the human condition in general, which is that it suggests that the most dangerous and powerful forces and figures may be those that operate in the shadows, usually unseen, unbelieved, or unrecognized. So I bring this up because the medicine is encoded in the poison. I've said that before. It's very important because it is the awareness of the shadow. It is giving it name and form that simply shines a light on it, and then you see it. Then it becomes something that's not in the shadow anymore. Then the fear isn't there. It doesn't have a powerful grip over you. There's another quote, if you laugh at the devil, it will run away. That comes from the Enlifted crew, the Enlifted coaching crew. Big up Enlifted coaches. Love that work. That work is shadow work because it connects the words of the unconscious with the unconscious breathing and brings it into the present moment. That is shadow work. So we're cultivating this awareness. The best way to do that is to sit in silence and cultivate a listening, silent stillness practice. Meditation has always been my number one practice. It has been for well over a decade. I do it every day, sometimes no more than 10 minutes, sometimes maybe closer to an hour. It doesn't matter. Just a little bit each day cultivates that awareness. Meditation on its own is great. It can cultivate a lot of stillness and good vibrations and presence. But for me, the real key, the real gold in meditation is that it just creates that little bit of space between my thoughts and my beliefs, between the thinking and the listening, between the thought and the observer. That space, even if it's just a tiny millimeter of a space, allows me to look at my thoughts with a little bit more objectivity. Like, okay, I don't have to take this on as a belief. It's just a thought. It's not mine. It's got nothing to do with me. It sounds like me. Sounds like my voice. Sounds like my dad. Sounds like my mum. But it's not. It's just an energy that's manifesting through my consciousness as a familiar thought energy that I'm going to connect with. So that space is all important. 5 minutes a day is the perfect place. Don't worry about how you sit. Don't worry about how you look. Don't worry about trying to stop thoughts. Just listen to the thoughts with a touch more objectivity, with a little bit of curiosity, actually a little bit of playfulness. It's like, what is going on up there? If I can start with the premise that these thoughts, they're not mine and they got nothing to do with me, let's have a listen, let's tune in. And again, because we're so distracted in life, because we're so consumed by information, then we don't often take that time, just that moment or two, to quieten down our space and listen. That's where the magic is. So if you develop a meditation practice, then you separate thinking from listening. And if you separate thinking from listening, then you detach psyche from self. Very important. And if you experience a separation between psyche and self, then you achieve freedom from suffering. Okay, that's a big, bold claim, and it's a lifelong practice. But when you get to the point where you are the observer of your thoughts rather than the believer of your thoughts, that's where the magic happens in shadow work. So meditation, perfect place to start. This goes hand in hand with active imagination, which I briefly mentioned earlier. The two were prescribed by the OG Carl Jung, Dr. Carl Jung, the OG of shadow work. He prescribed meditation and active imagination as the primary prescribed medicines for the unconscious influences. Active imagination is effectively where you treat your psyche as an autonomous space. Right? This takes a little bit of getting used to as an idea in our Western mind, because we've been conditioned that everything that happens in here is me. Well, what if it's not? What if this is actually just the channel to everything, right? And there's autonomous beings. We can call in parts of ourself, parts of our childhood, or other beings, or just listen to see like what's going on in there. And when we treat that as autonomous, then we have an opportunity again to create that separation. This is part of the idea that he talked about, the reality of the psyche. Like, it's real. It's not yours. You're a part of it, and it is a part of you, but it is real and autonomous. It's a very out there idea. There are some psychologies and therapeutic practices that are kind of getting to grips with this idea. The main one that I think of is internal family systems, IFS. It's an amazing practice. I resonate with it so much. Basically, you're invited into a bit of a meditative practice, and then you're asked to invite parts of yourself or communicate with parts of yourself as if they're autonomous, and interact with them as if they're autonomous. That is powerful shit. That is powerful, powerful shadow work. So awareness and active imagination. This is where it starts, the work of undoing negative self-talk. That's not necessarily the goal to undo it. It's not like, I tried that. I was at war with myself. I was really battling myself, trying to like kill that part of me. But as this dialogue and this conversation is going, like, you can't kill it because it's not yours, right? It's out, it's in the field, in the shadow, it's there. So the best we can do is become aware of it, engage with it, and then develop and cultivate a new mindset, something that we can practice when we become aware of the negative self-chat. Let me give you an example from my own experience, which is to do with the work that I'm doing. Is that I can't do this. No one's going to listen to me. There's other people out there doing stuff that's better than this. I would catch that. That would be the trigger point. That would be the ignition point of my own narrative to be like, no, wait a sec. Intentionally bring a new mindset to the forefront of my consciousness. I can do it. I can do it. I am doing it. I am good enough. People will resonate. Some people won't. I'm not for everyone. That's fine. But some people will. And if they don't, then at least I'm moving towards something meaningful that involves effort, right? That makes sense. So that's the intentional mindset. Abracadabra. With my word, I create. So I'm naming, I'm becoming aware of, and I'm engaging with the shadow, and then I'm creating a new mindset that grows in parallel, in strength. Right? I'm not trying to get rid of this. I'm just trying to acknowledge that this is something that has existed in my psyche and in the psyche of humanity forever. So, in summary, it's not yours. The negative self-talk that you experience on occasion or day to day, it's not yours. I understand that it feels viscerally real and impactful, but the thoughts itself, they're not yours. They didn't belong to you. They never did. Create a little bit of space with that awareness. Understand that the energy of those thoughts comes from deep in our ancestry. And, that's a whole field of exploration that you may want to look at. I don't know, but it's full on, right? The point is, it's not yours. Create a little bit of space. Recognize that it's manifesting through your mind in a way that is familiar to you and your life experience. With that, we can create a little bit of space with a bit of awareness, with a little bit of stillness practice, a little bit of meditating every day, and then actively engaging and communing with the shadow elements, either with a practitioner of IFS or on your own in meditation. Experiment with it, play with it. Use that space that you're creating through the awareness. That's the medicine. So when it comes up and you hear it and you feel it, you come over the top with new words, new spells, new sentences, and it's a practice, and it's a lifelong practice. And over time, it will get balanced. Over time, you are able to come over the top of the negative self-chat. Boom, come over the top with an empowering mindset, and that will change the way you feel and change the way you act in life. And remember to optimize your neurophysiology is you want to engage in that hard, effortful work, that meaningful work, getting into deep work. For me, it's writing. Writing is like the best practice of shadow work. Dump out all the thoughts. That's the first thing I do most mornings is I'll just write and I'll just dump out all the shit, all the surface level shit. And then eventually after maybe one side of A4, I start to get to a bit of gold, a bit of inspiration, a bit more intentional spell casting. That's what we're doing with these words. Your pen is your magic wand, right? So optimizing dopamine and getting rid of cheap dopamine is how you engage with the shadow, or at least it's a way of understanding the impact of the shadow and how to override it. Thank you very much for getting this far. This has been the Shadow Speaks podcast. Any questions, DM me. Just start a conversation, put some comments down. What do you think of it? How does negativity arise in your life? What are any tools that you are able to share? Let's join this conversation. What do I know? I don't know shit. I don't know anything. That's like the most wise thing I can say. Like, I want to be involved in conversation. This is just my perspective and my understanding as a devotee of the shadow. But what do you do? How does it work for you? Whatever you share, whatever works for you probably will work for someone else. So get involved in the conversation. Peace out. Bye for now. Be bold. Take action.